Good morning. Welcome to Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress, and I'll be your host for the next hour to share the truth, the unvarnished truth, the politically incorrect truth, but the truth nonetheless. And the truth only seems strange because we've been indoctrinated with fiction. That fiction is that the Roman Catholic Church is a Christian church, and not what the Bible calls it, the synagogue of Satan, and its man called the son of perdition, the man of sin, the Pope of Rome, the biblical and historical Antichrist. And to prove these theses, we will continue now in the book Codeword Barbelon, book 2 of a 2-book series, subtitled Antichrist is a Woman Alive and Well Again by P.D. Stewart. Get it at luxverbi.org. You can also go to my website and click on the image of this book, and it'll take you to the publisher's website. You can also find this book in reputable bookstores across the nation. Highly recommended book. This book and its predecessor, Codeword Barbelon 1, subtitled The Sons of Loyola and Their Plans for World Domination, are the most highly recommended books. If you want a college education in the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order, I recommend these 2 books. The most concise treatment of the Pope's New World Order that you'll find in print. For the most value for the dollar, I recommend these 2 books. Now, yesterday we were in the middle of a subject of purgatory, this imagined, manufactured, intermediary place of suffering for those who die and for those who believe in the immortality of the soul, quite contrary to the plain teaching of Scripture. They are reported to either go to heaven or to hell, or this intermediary place called purgatory, where they continue to pay for their sins, rejecting the grace, the unmerited grace and favor of God in salvation. Roman Catholics must pay for their sins in suffering in the flames of purgatory. It's a doctrine of demons. It identifies the Roman Catholic Church as that predicted by Paul to come in the last days. Now, where did this idea of purgatory originate? It originated from a man who the Roman Catholic Church calls a saint. His name, they call him Saint Odilio. And on that subject, the author says, and by the way, if you're following along, I'm in the middle of the page 229. 229 if you have a copy of this book and you're following along. And by the way, as we go, if you have questions or comments about particular portions of these texts, you may email me at tom@seawaves.us. That's tom@seawaves.us, and I'd be very happy to answer any and all questions if I can. Now, the author says, speaking of this so-called Saint Odilio, who created this phony doctrine called purgatory, he says, I wish to digress a little and say a few words about Saint Odilio and his legacy that may be of great interest to my reader. In the Catholic calendar, the day after All Saints' Day is All Souls' Day, which is November 2nd of each year, a day for, quote-unquote, the faithful, that is, Roman Catholics, to pray for the suffering souls in purgatory. Remember, they believe in the immortality of the soul. The soul goes to purgatory if it does not go to heaven or directly to hell. And they may pray for these people in this area of torment. Now, it says this holiday, or holy day as they call it, it should be reckoned as the Wiccan holiday, was started in AD 988 by Saint Odilio, it is said, listen to this, after he heard the devil say that, quote, the souls of dead men were daily snatched out of his hand by the alms and prayers of the living, unquote. So, St. Odilio got this idea of purgatory from the devil himself. It's admitted. It is a doctrine of demons. It's a doctrine of Satan. And it's adopted by the Roman Catholic Church. It says Odilio, who was then abbot of Cluny, soon called for a day for all, quote-unquote, the faithful, that is, faithful Roman Catholics, to pray for the souls in purgatory. Right away, and now obviously not surprisingly, All Souls Day became an instant sensation in the Catholic Church. On All Souls Day, especially in Mexico, where it is rightly called the Day of the Dead, appropriately, the faithful visit the graves of friends and relatives to bring them flowers and to offer food to the poor along the way to the cemetery. Quote, a later custom developed where people would go door to door on November 2nd requesting small cakes in exchange for the promise of saying prayers for some of the dead relatives in each house, unquote. It is said that this is how the Halloween tradition of begging for candy, in other words known as trick-or-treating, began. This fact is confirmed by the Roman Catholic Church in a document advertising the weekly Mass of St. Jude's Parish on October 26, 2008, page 4, under the heading Halloween Part 2, which states, quote, trick-or-treating has its origin in the custom Christians, that is, Catholics, Roman Catholics, had of dressing up as saints and begging for soul cakes, unquote. So says Father Gregory Yaxon of St. Jude's Parish, Mastic Beach, New York. So there we have an official admission by the Roman Catholic Church that this is where the origination of trick-or-treating came. And it resulted from the creation of purgatory by this so-called Saint Odilio, with all of which I reiterate, because it's so easily forgotten, all of it originates from the phony doctrine of the immortality of the soul. Now, further proof that the Roman Catholic Church actually condones and promotes Halloween is found on page 3 of the same circular, where the Church advertised that the Knights of Columbus have a free Halloween party October 31st, 2008. Reader, I leave you to form your own conclusions, says the author, and my conclusion is the same as P.D. Stewart's. And it says, with that digression, he says, we close our remarks on indulgences and purgatory by citing the observation of Dr. C.D. Cole. Quote, Romanism is a complicated system of salvation by works. It offers salvation on the installment plan and then sees to it that the poor sinner is always behind in his payments, so that when he dies there is a large unpaid balance, and he must continue payments by sufferings in purgatory, or until the debt is paid by the prayers, alms, and sufferings of his living relatives and friends. The whole system and plan calls for merit and money from the cradle to the grave and even beyond. Surely the wisdom that drew such a plan of salvation is not from above, unquote. Well said. Now we begin chapter 35 of this most revealing and educational book. It's entitled Celibacy, a subject that we've dealt with many times on Inquisition Update, and now this author is going to deal with it. Very wise words from this author about celibacy. The Scriptures foretold that one of the deceptions of Antichrist was that it would forbid its spiritual hierarchy to marry. Quote, "The Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, speaking lies in hypocrisy, forbidding to marry." Unquote. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. Does not Catholicism teach, rather forbid, all of its priests to marry? Writes Shaw, quote, "It is interesting to see as the clear light of this prophecy flashes full on the face of the papacy, how she winces and evades the gaze of an observing world, boldly asserting that the prophecy does not refer to her, but to quote-unquote ancient heretics, forgetting that the prophecy does not refer to the ancient heretics, but to the false teachers of the latter times." Unquote. Quoting again from the Scripture, "Now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits, forbidding to marry." Verses 1 and 3. Now, historian Joe Overbeck opines that, quote, "The most cruel, most immoral, but luckiest stroke of papal policy was the introduction of obligatory clerical celibacy, a clever trick by which the great infallible general obtained an army of soldiers totally free of all family ties, ready to march at a wink, ready to die like the gladiators of old." Unquote. What you must understand from this is that the creation of celibacy for the Roman Catholic priesthood eliminates all earthly and familial or family ties. A priest can be ordered from the papacy to go from one nation to another, from one diocese to another, from one neighborhood to another, to do battle for the papacy without having the baggage of a wife or children or other cares of this life. That he is totally free to give all of his allegiance, his love and affection and loyalty to the Pope, and have it not divided by the natural bond of marriage and all that entails. It made his gladiators more mobile, in other words. Now, said Bishop Newman, quote, "The imposing of celibacy and vows of chastity on the religious of both sexes, that is, nuns and priests, and many more rites and ceremonies are equally parts of pagan and popish superstition." Unquote. So this comes from ancient paganism. It comes from Babylonianism, as a matter of fact. That's why this church is called Mystery Babylon the Great. It predates Catholicism, or rather, Catholicism is just the continuation of the Babylonian mystery cult. And celibacy is part of that pagan practice adopted in the popish religion called Roman Catholicism. It says celibacy is a mere front for pedophile priests. As shown in Book 1, the real reason behind the epidemic of child sexual abuse within the Roman Catholic Church is, as Jesuit Professor Malachi Martin revealed, quote, "the culmination or the highest phase of the fallen archangel's rites." There you have a Jesuit priest, Malachi Martin, admitting that priest pedophilia results from Satan himself. Now, Martin says, quote, "the incidence of satanic pedophilia, rites and practices, was already documented among certain bishops and priests, widely dispersed," unquote. He refers to this common occurrence among Roman Catholic priests as, quote, occultic acts of satanic pedophilia, unquote. That from page 632 of his book, The Keys of This Blood. Now consider how differently other churches are treated by the law enforcement authorities as compared to the Roman Catholic Church. Former church leader Warren Steed Jeffs, a notorious polygamist of the Fundamental Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, the FLDS, with 10,000 followers, is facing multiple criminal charges in Arizona and Utah, including being accomplice to incest and sexual conduct with minors. Warren Jeffs was put on the FBI's most wanted fugitives list. In April of 2008, acting on the outcry of an alleged teen victim of physical and sexual abuse at the FLDS compound in Schleicher County, the Texas Child Protective Services and Department of Public Safety officers entered the premises and served search and arrest warrants and executed court orders designed to protect the children. That's right. And I understand that call was the call that set all this off against Warren Jeffs was an anonymous female caller from California. And I'm not here to defend Warren Jeffs. I don't know enough about Warren Jeffs to suggest that he's either innocent or guilty of those charges. But I am familiar with the Tony Alamo case. Tony Alamo was never a pedophile. Tony Alamo never had sexual relations with any underage women, only his wife. Tony Alamo is serving 175 years in prison for allegedly having sex with the little girls in the ministry. And for a while on my website were the Child Protective Services video interviews of the girls in that ministry down in Falk, Arkansas, who were stricken with horror when they were suggested that Tony Alamo was somehow sexually offending little girls in the ministry. Appalling. Trumped up charges by disgruntled past members of the ministry who could not obey God's law and got kicked out of the ministry, waging a vendetta against Tony Alamo, raising all kinds of suspicions about him. And it grew and grew and grew until the government could finally get a jury that would convict him. That's how I see what happened. I spoke directly to the parents of the children who were taken out of the ministry, and they insist, even to this day, that Tony Alamo never offended any of the little girls in that ministry. He was falsely charged. He was criminally tried in a kangaroo court, a Holy Roman Inquisition, inquisitorial type court, convicted and sent to prison for the rest of his life. And it just so happens that Tony Alamo spent 4 decades telling the truth about the Roman Catholic Church. And I maintain, if the truth ever comes out, and it will come out when Christ returns, we'll find that entire inquisition against Tony Alamo to be rooted in a Roman Catholic bishop somewhere in the area. Look at the cosmic disparity between what happened to Warren Jeffs on the suggestion that he was a pedophile and the erroneous suggestion that Tony Alamo was a pedophile. Look at the cosmic disparity between those two incidents and the global pedophile priest pandemic in the world. If the same justice was meted out to the Roman Catholic Church as was meted out to Tony Alamo Christian Ministries in Falk, Arkansas, every Roman Catholic priest would be in prison for the rest of his life, and every parent of every little Roman Catholic child would be stripped of custody of their children and would be labeled criminally negligent for raising their children around pedophile priests. But the world just won't see the truth. They won't acknowledge the cosmic disparity that lies between the treatment of pedophile priests and the Roman Catholic Church in this country and every other church. Well, I'm here to emphasize the cosmic disparity and simply suggest that the reason the Roman Catholic Church is treated so differently is because she is that last church, that latter-day apostasy spoken of by the Apostle Paul. And this Roman Catholic Church is protected by the state, by the government, and by the courts, and by Christians all over the world. But her day of reckoning is coming. God hasten the day. Now, likewise, Canadian polygamist Winston Blackmore, leader of the community of Bountiful, BC, accused of having 19 wives, some as young as 15 years of age, was charged under Canada's criminal law. Now, I ask, says the author, why aren't similar raids carried out on the Roman Catholic churches when there are many more such victims of child rape in the Roman Catholic Church, and especially since that church has a far, far longer and much more sinister career in such matters as pedophilia and sexual offense? As I wrote in Book 1, says P.D. Stewart, the present Pope in his capacity as Prefect of the Faith, Cardinal Ratzinger, as he was then known, issued a controversial letter. It was entitled Delictus Gravioribus, and it was written to all Roman Catholic bishops, directing that confidential details of Roman Catholic Church investigations into accusations made against priests of, quote-unquote, certain serious ecclesiastical crimes. See, they don't even have the nerve to call it what it is, priest pedophilia, were not to be revealed, as they are subject to the pontifical secret, and if revealed would result in excommunication. The author gives us a note citing his source, Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, always known in the past as the Holy Roman Inquisition. The document was entitled Delictus Gravioribus. It was issued to Roman Catholic bishops on May 18, 2001, and it was also referred to by Jamie Doward in the work entitled Pope Obstructed Sex Abuse Inquiry. It was published in The Observer on Sunday, April 24, 2005. Cosmic disparity. Cardinal Ratzinger, the head of the Holy Roman Inquisition, simply wrote a letter to all the bishops telling them, on pain of excommunication, you must maintain the secrecy of these investigations. The Roman Catholic Church protects her pedophile priests. And Malachi Martin, one of the Jesuit priests who revealed this global priest pandemic, pedophile priest pandemic, simply revealed that it is a doctrine of devils. It is practiced widely by the priesthood. It's protected because it's part of their religion. And I'll explain more what their diabolical philosophy is behind pedophilia when we get back from the break. Now, we're continuing with our discussion of satanic priest pedophilia, as it was called by a Jesuit priest, Malachi Martin, in his book, The Keys of This Blood, page 632, developing the idea that the pedophile priest pandemic in the Roman Catholic Church is derived from Satan. Not only that, but it was a tradition in the ancient mystery schools. Back then, they thought there was some way to derive virtue, to steal virtue from the most innocent by offering babies and young pre-teen, pre-adolescents on the altar. Human sacrifice. And part of that occultic tradition was infant sodomy. That somehow sodomizing a little boy, the adepts of these ancient mystery cults could extract from their victim their virtue and youth and power and vigor. And it's still practiced in mystery cults today. If the truth were known, and the truth will eventually come out, because there's nothing hidden in the dark from God's eyes, all of this will be revealed, and the missing children in this country, the untold hundreds of thousands of missing children, millions and millions of missing children around the world, it'll be discovered that they were the victims of these occultic adepts who use pedophilia as a source of power and longevity, believing that somehow, through this act, that they can extend their lives and increase their occultic power by stealing the virtue of the most innocent. It's as old as occultism itself. And Roman Catholicism, for the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church, is just an extension of that ancient mystery occultic religion. That's why the Bible calls it Mystery Babylon the Great. Priest pedophilia is a religious act. That's why it is protected by the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church. That's why we see this cosmic disparity all over the world between the pedophilia that rages out of control of the Roman Catholic Church and isolated incidents and false accusations even brought against other churches in this country. Those that we've already named this morning. And the righteous judge of all heaven and earth will throw back the covers of darkness that covers the crimes of the Roman Catholic Church, and we'll all see it for ourselves. God hasten the day. Now he says, as I wrote in Book 1, backing up just a little bit for continuity, said the present Pope in his capacity as prefect of the faith, that is the holy office of the Inquisition, Cardinal Ratzinger issued a controversial letter entitled Delictus Gravioribus to all Roman Catholic bishops, directing that confidential details of church investigations into accusations made against priests of, quote-unquote, certain serious ecclesiastical crimes, let me just say it flat out, priest pedophilia, were not to be revealed as they were subject to the pontifical secret, and if revealed would result in excommunication. P.D. Stewart says, notice, reader, that there's no mention of excommunication of the pedophile priests, only those priests who dare reveal the rape and the deviant crimes of their fellow clergy. Why is the Pope and his Roman Catholic Church above the law? Why is the institutionalized concealment of child rape not a crime against humanity? Why is the Roman Catholic Church allowed to perform private ceremonies of repentance and to make church-funded payoffs to victims rather than face the full force of justice and punishment? I'll tell you why. Because they control the courts. Remember, the donation of Constantine, according to the papacy, raises the papacy above the law. As the book, The Papacy and the Civil Power, makes plain, that bringing a charge against a Roman Catholic priest is the same as a slave bringing a charge against a slave master. The papacy regards himself the lawgiver, and he is above the law, sovereign and supreme. It is his prerogative to judge all men, and no man may judge him or his priests. And the courts of this land, supposedly a Protestant nation, observes and obeys that pontifical ban against prosecution of the pedophile priests in this country. And it's time the American people knew the truth. Now, the author continues, he says, Desiderius Erasmus, the most learned of the Roman Catholics at the area of the Protestant Reformation, says, quote, if anyone consider the state of these times, how great a part of mankind the multitude of monks take up, how great a part the collection of priests and clergymen, and then consider how few out of so great a number truly preserve chastity of life, and how great scandal most of them are openly incestuous, into what kind of lusts innumerable of them degenerate, he will perhaps conclude that those who are not continent, in other words, those who cannot contain their sexual drive, may have the freedom of public marriage, which they may purely and chastely maintain, unquote. But I go even further. The revelation of the truth about behind priest pedophilia comes in Romans chapter 1. As I've said it many times, I won't belabor the point today, but those who make and bow down and worship images and idols, those who have an unnatural affection for man-made gods, also develop an unnatural affection for same sex, and they defile themselves in the very same way they defiled God when they reduced him to a man-made filthy image. It's divine recompense. The judgment has already fallen upon the Roman Catholic Church, and that judgment is evident by the widespread practice of priest pedophilia, open for all the eyes of the world to see now. If we'll just have the courage of faith, the spiritual fortitude to admit the cause of priest pedophilia and condemn the Roman Catholic Church for the Babylonian cult that it is. Now, the author is going to talk about the sisters, the nuns of the Roman Catholic Church, many who think who are virtuous models of the Christian faith. Here's what he says. As to the holy sisters, the nuns, Catholic Cardinal Peter Daly said that he dared not to describe the sexual immorality carried on in the nunneries, but was prepared to say that, quote-unquote, taking the veil, which is the term used to describe as someone who becomes a nun, was simply another mode of becoming a public prostitute. Of course, not all nuns are implicated, but nevertheless, the vice is reportedly so widespread that according to historian W.E.H. Lecky, quote, the writers of the Middle Ages are full of accounts of nunneries that were like brothels, of the vast multitude of infanticides within their walls. In other words, they were houses of prostitution for the priests, and when they conceived a child, they were instantly killed upon birth and buried in the basements of their nunneries in lime pits. The evidence of this was found all over the world, even in the United States of America and Mexico. Now, writes Shaw, quote, the occasional revelations of the confessional, the monastery, and the nunnery have presented enormous statistics of vice, according to the statements of Romish writers, in other words, Roman Catholic writers, occasionally vomiting forth their own shame, unquote. And occasionally, the shame does overwhelm a Roman Catholic priest, and he spills his guts about what really goes on in the nunneries and the monasteries of the Roman Catholic Church. Sadly, many of these priests, when they get finally fed up with the atrocities that are committed as routine in the Roman Catholic Church, They leave the Roman Catholic Church, but then they leave Christ altogether. What horrors, what crime, what atrocities have been committed against the name of Christ in these Roman Catholic institutions? How many souls have been lost? The number would stagger us, and we'll never know until Christ comes to tell us. Now, the shame extended to Rome, for it was discovered that there was an underground passage between a convent and a nunnery in Rome itself. Lee states that about the year 1774, quote, 2 Carmelite convents at Rome, one male and the other female, which had to be pulled down because underground passages had been established between them, by means of which the monks and the nuns lived in indiscriminate licentiousness, unquote. Senator Thomas E. Watson, a member of the United States House of Representatives and a nominee for the United States presidency, called the convents, quote-unquote, brothels. In several instances in America, quote, between many of the monasteries and nunneries, an underground passage was found connecting the one building to the other, unquote. William Hogan, a former Roman Catholic priest, revealed, quote, Popish priests and Jesuits seldom travel without being accompanied by nuns. They add greatly to their comforts while on their pilgrimage for the advancement of their vows of morality and chastity, unquote. Yes, morality and chastity. What a joke. And the world is the victim of the joke. It even gives an aerial picture, an aerial photograph, or an aerial depiction, a drawing of these institutions, this Roman Catholic monastery and nunnery, and the underground passage that lies between them. In short, the nunneries were as dens of prostitution. Cardinal Peter Daly wrote that he dare not describe the immorality of the nunneries. But Professor Gerson is more forthright. He recalls the nunneries of his time houses of prostitution, and the monasteries centers of trade and amusement, and the priesthood he described as habitual concubinarians. Habitual concubinarians means they had concubines, prostitutes, live-in lovers. Oh, they weren't married. That's against Roman Catholic canon law. But it doesn't say anything about shacking up with your sister in the nunnery. And, of course, if something embarrassing happens, like conception, you simply snuff the life out of the little baby when it's born and bury it. The Apostle Paul also followed... The Apostle Paul also added the following to his description, his identification of this false system called Roman Catholicism. In verse 3 of the same chapter, 1 Timothy chapter 4, after mentioning forbidding to marry, what we now know as celibacy, Paul says further that this false system would be found, quote, commanding to abstain from meats which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving, unquote. Does not the Roman Catholic Church prohibit the use of certain meats on certain days of the week and certain seasons of the year, and pronouncing damnations upon those who disobey? Doctrines of demons. That's what Paul calls them. And that's what they are. Because the Roman Catholic Church is the church of Satan. It is the dragon who gave the Pope his seat and power and great authority. Paul was speaking none other than the latter-day apostasy, which began shortly after his time when the Caesars of Rome left their throne, their vestments, their jurisdiction, their power, and their supposed God-like nature to the Bishop of Rome who rose up in his place. It was the Caesars who were the restrainers of the rise of Antichrist. And when they left Rome, up rose the little horn, who had eyes like a man and a big mouth, speaking blasphemous things, the Pope of Rome. Now, chapter 36 of the book is entitled The Mysteries of Roman Catholicism. It's a mystery religion, you know. It's just an extension of the ancient mystery schools of Babylon and Persia and Greece and now Rome. Nothing has changed except they just plastered the name Christianity over it. But those who have eyes to see and ears to hear are not deceived by this cloak of Christianity that covers the most diabolical religion that has existed on the earth since the flood. And my assertion is it's just a mirror image of what existed before the flood, which caused God to repent that he ever made man and destroyed it with a flood. That's the apostasy that is now called Christianity today. The mysteries of Roman Catholicism begins with an excerpt from a passage in Revelation chapter 17, and upon her forehead was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great. The author said Bishop Newton, quote, Yet further to distinguish the woman, she has her name inscribed upon her forehead, Revelation 17:5, in allusion to the practice of some notorious prostitutes who had their names written in a label upon their foreheads, as we may recollect from ancient authors, unquote. Adds Newton, quote, the inscription is so very particular that we cannot easily mistake the person. Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, or rather fornications, and abominations of the earth. And another quote, he says, And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, Revelation 17:5. Why does the woman bear the title, Mystery, Babylon, so boldly across her forehead? What is meant by this title? What is the riddle? No one would dispute that this language is symbolic and not literal. Thankfully, this cryptic expression is used elsewhere in the Scripture. And the Apostle Paul refers to Antichrist as, quote, the mystery of iniquity in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 through 10. Bishop Newton explains, quote, her name mystery can imply no less than that she dealeth in mysteries. Her religion is a mystery of iniquity, and she herself is mystically and spiritually Babylon the Great, unquote. I will now proceed to show that, like Babylon of old, its modern pretender also claims to have a mystery religion. Just as the Apostle Paul refers to Antichrist as the mystery of iniquity in 2 Thessalonians 2, so we find the word mystery used prophetically in the last book of the Bible in connection with the word iniquity or abomination. Quote, And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Revelation 17:3 and 5. Note that it is a woman who has the name Mystery upon her forehead, not a man. And iniquity or abomination is associated with her works, for she is called the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. A harlot is a prostitute, and this woman is said in a symbolic sense to be the mother of them all. The mystery of iniquity spoken of by Paul in 2 Thessalonians 2 verses 3 and 10 is the same mystery Babylon of Revelation 17:3 and 5. When we look at Revelation 13, verse 16 through 18, we learn that this mystery woman has a man, for it says, and he spoken of in the he spoken of in 2 Thessalonians 2, who heads her work of iniquity. So we know the woman is the Roman Catholic Church, and the he spoken of by Paul is its patriarch, is the Roman Catholic Church's patriarchal head, the Pope. It says, hence St. Paul calls him the man of sin and the wicked one. Now here is the mystery solved. The word mystery is the very term used in Roman Catholicism to refer to her liturgy and the Mass, which they call the Paschal Mass mystery, one of the central pillars of all Roman Catholic dogma. These are the Latin words used by the Roman Catholic priests at the Mass. Quote, for this is the chalice of my blood, of the new and eternal testament, the mystery of faith, which for you and for many shall be shed unto the remission of sins. Unquote. Mystery is at the very heart of Roman Catholicism, for the words mysterium fide is pronounced at every alleged transformation of the bread and the wine into what Roman Catholics believe becomes the literal body and blood of Christ, the so-called Eucharist. Further, Rome's New Catechism explains that the liturgy of the Mass, quote, aims to initiate souls into the mystery of Christ. It is mystagogy, they say. And the Roman Catholic Catechism adds that the Church's entire liturgy is mystery. There, reader, prophecy fulfilled. In the encyclical Mysterium Fidei, Pope Paul VI, speaking of the Holy Eucharist, as they call it, promulgated on September 3rd, 1965, used the words mystery or mysteries no less than 29 times. For example, most holy mystery, Eucharistic mystery, lofty mystery, doctrine of the mystery, sublime of mysteries, and sacred mysteries. This is the Babylonian mystery religion. It's rooted in ancient Babylonian mysticism. And that's not all. We've only scratched the surface. There are the 15 mysteries of the Rosary, the mystery of the Visitation, the mystery of the Annunciation, the mystery of the agony in the garden, the mystery of the presentation in the temple, the mystery of finding Jesus in the temple, the mystery of the scourging at the pillar, the mystery of the crowning of thorns, the mystery of Jesus carrying his cross, the mystery of the crucifixion, the mystery of the resurrection, the mystery of the ascension of our Lord, the mystery of the descent of the Holy Spirit, the mystery of the assumption of the Blessed Virgin, the mystery of the coronation of the Blessed Virgin as Queen of Heaven. It's that spoken of in the Bible. Mystery. Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. By her own admission,